In this Threading Thoughts podcast, we talk about the future of work and making individuals as well as organizations ready for it. In the future of work, people and organizations will have to constantly reinvent themselves, demonstrate agility, and make learning their topmost priority. Thus, upskilling is not restricted to taking new courses or amassing new degrees. It is, in fact, also career development and career transition, enabling managers to figure out how to align their work to their talents, needs, life stage, values, and energy. Especially relevant to mid senior individuals who are at career crossroads and want to reinvent themselves. Agile leadership development also enables leaders to be agile from insight, cognitive and emotional agility, and thus responding to complex and disruptive environments. For organizations who take a strength based view of their people and want to develop leaders who can deeply sense and respond to a dynamic environment, employee engagement becomes paramount. Kavita has been a writer, social entrepreneur, researcher, language teacher, trainer, and coach. Having gone through these transitions and career reinventions, she understands how one's personal narratives of oneself shapes one's professional choices and decisions, and how one can consciously change these. She coaches people who are in transition or contemplating one. With her skills in coaching and personal growth, facilitation, learning and development, behavioral change, and wide experience across talent development, organization development, change management, organizational transformation, her approach to leadership development is practice centered, experiential, and purpose driven. Thank you so much, Kavita, for joining us today. It's such a pleasure having you with us for this podcast.
Thank you, Mridula, for inviting me, and really happy to be here sharing my thoughts.
Wonderful, wonderful. So reinvention, how does this empower and enable internal transition? And is this at odds with the foundational skills, if at all? Because right now we are all talking about upskilling and getting, new skills. But sometimes there is this internal foundational skills and foundational, strengths, I think, that really need to be highlighted. So what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So I think reinvention is absolutely and critically the need of the hour. And but I think there is a bit of a misnomer when we look at it as reinvention. So in fact, I think it's more about repurposing. So reinvention is not as much as, starting from scratch. So for a lot of us, and in fact, this word becomes even more relevant to us after the few early years of our careers, because until then you are actually in the process of figuring out for yourself what are your skills, who you are, what are the different kinds of work environments that you thrive in, right? So the early part of your career is a lot about inventing yourself, right? And after that it becomes reinventing, but then that reinventing is not a process of beginning from scratch, and that's why there isn't so I think it's not something which we need to be afraid of. We have to be looking at it in the context of how are we repurposing ourselves. And that's where I think what you said is very important, that it is in fact building very strongly upon your foundational skills. So what we have done in the first, say, 10 to 15 years of our careers gives us a fairly good idea of our foundational skills. And here I in fact want to differentiate between foundational skills which are, in a sense emerged out of the kind of education that we have, and other kinds of foundational skills, because many times we get this, and in fact I think it's very particular to India, we tend to, see ourselves by the lens of the professional qualification that we have. And then we think that, oh, my skill, I have studied finance and accounting, I have a chartered accountancy degree, and therefore my foundational skill has to be something to do with finance, right? But that's not necessarily so. So, and especially I see this a lot at the stage of mid-career. Mid-career now we call people anywhere between, 15 years, 12, 15 years of your work. And then you are at that stage where you actually have to look at yourself in terms of how do I now construct the remaining part of my career more thoughtfully. Until now, a lot of these choices have been the result of, autopilot. Okay, I studied this and I got into this college. therefore I got to this kind of a job. But then after that, the reinvention is about actually taking that pause, not necessarily giving up your work, but taking that mental pause to think about, okay, now I've realized that, okay, I have a degree in finance and accounting, but I think I'm very good with managing stakeholders. I think I do very well in terms of, that's what gives me energy. That's what makes the best use of the skills that I have, the various kinds of experiences that I have. So that's what I think is this part about reinvention, which means understand what is that core, set of experiences and foundational skills, and then repurpose that and put that in a different context and experiment with the context, because we are going to live very long lives, like it or not. We are, and there's a fantastic research done by professors Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott. They call it the 100-year life, and
Right.
they say that if you're living for so long, you have to be able to keep reinventing yourself. You cannot consider what you've studied until 25 to set the tone for the rest of your life. So
True.
that's what I mean by taking reinvention and repurposing it for different contexts, for different life stages, for different kinds of aspirations that you have. So I think your question is completely on point, that yes, we need to reinvent, but it has to be about taking your foundational skills and building on that.
That is absolutely so lucidly put, because a lot of us have a fear that whatever skills or learning that in the early years, we always feel that we might have to drastically move away. Actually, what happens is we find new paths to use the same learning, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a search. But for an outsider, it might seem that you're drastically doing something different. But not necessarily so, right?
Absolutely.
Necessarily. Yes. And that brings me to my next question. What would be your 4-point mantra for successful future skill development?
Okay. So 4 points, if you're asking me to only look at 4 points, then I would start with the most important thing. And that's not that I have 2 cats. And I really think that curiosity, the whole, this whole term that we have, that curiosity killed the cat.
Kill the cat, yeah.
And curiosity is what is going to keep us relevant for the future. So, curiosity is the most essential mindset, I think, for future skill development. It's a mindset, and it is at the heart of everything else that we need for the future, which is learning, agility, growth. So curiosity is so foundational, and because the shelf life of skills is getting exceedingly short, so we've got to keep learning anew, learning more, and finding things that interest us. So that again comes from being curious. What is it that I want to be? What kind of problems do I want to work on? So that brings me to the second, mindset for the future skills, which is about concern. So curiosity and concern. What is it that I am concerned about? Now, given that we are in the midst of so much information, so many choices all around us, how do we decide that, yes, this is something meaningful that I want to learn more about? How do we even figure out that this is an area that I want to upskill in, right? So that becomes, and then if you just follow a fad that, everybody is learning coding, so I need to learn Python, right? It doesn't work like that, because you will eventually make a very poor coder if you do not have real concern. So concern meaning, what is the kind of problem that I can solve by learning something? What matters to me? And therefore, if something matters to me, I will have the curiosity, I have the concern to try and do something about it, which means that I'm willing to invest in learning, in skilling myself, and then therefore taking it forward. So these are 2 points: curiosity and concern. And then I would also think that we really need to invest in our relationships. So communication and collaboration, these are very, very important,
very critical, in fact. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think again, and these are all so intricately linked that, so again, communication, collaboration, who are we connecting with? We want to connect not only with the same kind of people that we are, but we need to connect with people who are very different from us, because that's where those new ideas come in. That's where, all those sparks of different thoughts, which is what we need. We can't keep working on the same track and then expect to be noticed. If we want to really thrive in the future and invest in ourselves for the future, then we need to be able to connect to different kinds of thoughts. We need to inhabit boundaries, and we need to be able to communicate. So I think one hugely important skill for the future is learning to tell your stories, and the medium could be very different. Like, for instance, nowadays we have so many mediums. You're doing this fantastic podcast, you have so many options of doing videos, writing, but whatever it is, are you learning how to communicate? And again, that again comes from your conviction, your curiosity, your passion and interest in what you are doing. So again, all of these are very intricately, as I said, woven into what we require to do for future skill development.
Oh, that's beautiful, and it is so true, because a lot of people, when they actually are able to do a lot of work, as you said, the communication and reaching out to people is completely lost, and that's half the battle almost. You're trying to engage with more people, because again, I loop back to your first and second point, perspectives. The more you talk to others, the more different perspectives you land up with, and again, that's a learning, right? That's a learning on your journey.
Right.
I think that's very, very interesting. The millennial generation of employees has a new set of expectations, right, from employers. So some of them are, reimagining office culture, new recruitment dynamics, or even creating personal brands. So how can companies prepare themselves to engage with this dedicated but quite an ambitious generation?
Right. So I think millennials and even after them, right, whatever they call Generation Z, and I have an 11-year-old son, so he's also soon going to be the ranks of all those, right? So I think one very important thing is that these are people who have grown up exposed to a lot. Right? They have grown up with far more choices and information than perhaps the previous generations have. They've had access to that, right? So whatever organizations need to do to get the best out of these has to be in a way which does not impose on them, but rather it has to spark them to bring all this information, bring all these ideas, pull it together from all the different worlds that they inhabit. They are inhabiting many, many more worlds than we are, right? Because they have that kind of agility. They've grown up with that kind of exposure and access, right? So one of the things I think is how do organizations motivate and encourage these people is, I think, bringing in using stories. So rather than tell them what you need to do, telling was something which worked for us because we grew up in that kind of a generation. But telling doesn't work anymore. Rather, showing through stories, showing through examples, and then helping them make meaning. So of course, you do need the perspectives of more experienced people, but we need those perspectives to be shared in the form of stories, in the form of engaging questions, which can and have some patience for them to be able to bring all these things together. Because it's not going to come out in the form that we are typically used to. But then we've got to prod and help in bringing it together and working with that and seeing how it goes. So I think it's about having a certain sense of experimentation on both sides, that we also are open to some of those more perhaps different kinds of ideas, and from the other side for them also to experiment with for us to share stories and help them to experiment in those frames with coming up with ideas.
Nice. And it's a two-way street, isn't it, Kavita?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I think that's the fun, and that we are having intergenerational workforces, so that's
correct.
Far more exciting that way.
Correct.
You don't have.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's where the fun is, and that's where the challenge is as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you must be doing quite a lot of that, right? Working with with students, with people from very diverse age groups and backgrounds.
No, absolutely. And sometimes it's very, very challenging because you come up with so many different perspectives that you're not even exposed to. You're not exposed to. So to sort of bridge those kind of gaps takes a little bit of, I think, effort and a little more understanding. So
Yeah,
it's always an interesting journey, though.
that's right. Yeah. Hmm.
And how do you, I'm very interested in this though, how do you link myths to management? I mean, I would love to hear your perspective on this.
Okay. So myths, I keep going back to myths. I think myths are very fascinating because myths are in fact a structure for us to think beyond our own mind. I think, so and I'll tell you some very interesting personal examples of how I used myths. So myths, we grow up thinking that myth is almost like is religion, but no, myths are a way of us being able to perhaps look at the human condition in an overall sense, right, and see that we are, and that is so liberating, because many times we start thinking that I'm alone in this process, and because we think that my circumstances are very unique to me, and that kind of brings a lot of mental stress. It brings a lot of unnecessary, I don't know, it gets very difficult to handle if we think that this is only happening to me. Now,
The
why
loneliness,
myths?
right? The
The
loneliness
loneliness,
in the struggle.
yeah, the struggle, and the feeling that why is this happening to me, right? But when I'm able to connect my condition, and that is where myths are so powerful, and they should be definitely brought into, in fact, mainstream management and leadership literature, I mean the discourse, because myths are in a sense the human condition, speaking through the ages of the various struggles that have happened to us collectively, and how can we rise out of it. And every whether it's Greek mythology, whether it's Indian mythology, these are universal patterns of human, the way that we respond, and therefore there is a lot to take away. So let me tell you some personal instances of how I've used myths to make sense of my own condition. Because I always feel that unless something applies to me, I can't go and talk about it to anyone else. So there was a time when I was so I did my graduation from IIM Ahmedabad, and then I worked for a couple of years in the corporate environment. And after that, I felt the need to be on my own, to explore my whole, journey around working with education, working with learning and development. And in fact, I started off wanting to. I also did a stint in social entrepreneurship, where we worked with traditional Indian art and crafts people. So various kinds of things. But you know how it is that so I did this for almost a decade and a half, and this was a fairly lonely journey, because so when I graduated in 2002, and soon after that I left, and from about 2005 I was on my own. Startups, this whole idea of do your own thing had not yet become mainstream
Right.
yet.
Right.
So very lonely. It was a very, very lonely journey. And honestly, there were many times when I used to feel, you tend to feel that why am I doing this, whereas my peers are somewhere else, and how do I justify to myself that these were steps which I took in the right direction. Of course, there was an inner voice which said that yes, this is the way that it has to be. But so one day I remember, and this was a real sudden revelation which I had. One, I was just I keep reading these stories of from the epics from Ramayana and Mahabharata to my son. This was when he was about 4 or 5 years old, and you know how we all tend to share those stories with our children. So I
Correct.
used to read those stories, and then one day it struck me that uh, just like these, so in many of these myths, you have these princes and kings who are actually asked to go on exile for a reason. So that exile is a period of complete loss of identity and anchors and privileged ways of seeing yourself. And then you discover the resources that you have in yourself. You discover the all the different, I mean, what is it that you are stripped of all those titles, right? So that's what our journey, the journey of, say, the exile of Ram, even the exile of the Pandavas. It actually struck me that this is what it is, that what was he in the jungle? He was not a king. He had nothing to, no title, no privileges which came from there. And then that was again that was a test of finding his own self. And that was where I found that and suddenly that whole penny dropped kind of a thing, and I
Yeah.
felt that yes, that it's not something which is a story which is of happened to a king. It is something which can happen to all of us.
Anybody.
Yeah, it can happen to anyone, and this is what is a lesson which I need to take from this. I need to be able to understand that, do this journey for myself, where I need to find what is it that I have, what are my internal anchors away from all these other qualifications, what did I do in the past, etc. And that was very, very liberating, and very I really felt empowered, in the sense that I understand this condition now.
That's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And it's amazing that, we often see these in isolation. Honestly speaking, we put too much of weight on the story itself, but it's the circumstance that is important, right? And we forget
that comes to us when we go through these experiences.
Exactly. And then we realize, oh my God, here's a parallel that I read, and this is exactly similar to what I'm going through, things like that, right? So that is what is very, very interesting.
Yeah, we used to have a fascinating course on leadership, which was all about understanding leadership through the lens of stories, literature, myths, and I think that is so important.
That is so important.
It is not just about the what you do as a leader, but who you are.
And just the fact that we are not reinventing the wheel. You already have all of these to draw from, and all these are amazing management lessons, right? Which we never really relate to as myths. It's more philosophy or religion, but where management takeaways, and this is what is really bringing it out. Lovely. But thank you, Kavita. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I'm sure, each one of these really makes a difference to a lot of people who are at, I won't say crossroads, but sort of rethinking where they want to go in life. And I think this really gives a clarity that a lot of us did not have before. So thank you so much for taking time off.
Thank you, Mridula. It was a pleasure. And I hope we all keep reinventing. It's a continuous process. We need to be on this journey all together.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And thank you so much.
Thank you.